San Diego sports leader, it is the mighty 1090. Last couple of Tuesdays, we had Brian Dutcher on the AHC HCIW. They were preparing for a game that night. San Diego State is 11-0. They play tomorrow night back into a Wednesday-Saturday rotation. They will play on the road at Fresno State. Pre-game starts at 7:30 with some guy named Jordan. Joining us now is Brian Dutcher. Dutch, good to talk to you.
It's great to be back after another Aztec victory, Darren.
Now, is your routine a little screwy? Because we're used to having these games Tuesday night. Now you guys are preparing for a Wednesday night. I know athletes, coaches to a certain extent, heck, even people in broadcasting, we all become creatures of habit.
Yeah, Darren, I think I said last time, I prefer the Wednesday, Saturday. I like to give the kids off Sunday, which we were able to do. We had a huge win against New Mexico, and then the kids had Sunday off where they had no obligation with us at all, where they could kind of get their feet up, get their legs underneath them, get a little rest. And then we were back at it Monday getting ready for Fresno on Wednesday.
Fair enough. Okay, figured I'd ask. You don't sound like you're too much that creature of habit like I was just describing.
No, I think the Tuesdays are tough because
Yeah.
you're practicing on playing Saturday, practice Sunday, Monday, playing Tuesday, and then taking Wednesday off. And if Wednesday's an off day, you got class, you got other obligations. So I think it's good to have a full day off away from everything. So I'm in favor of that Wednesday, Saturday. So we got through our stretch of Tuesday games, and now we got the Wednesday rotation again.
Brian Dutcher on San Diego sports leader, the mighty 1090, the AHC HCIW. Dutch, I got to ask, I don't know that I've ever asked you this before, but a lot is made externally about the streak that San Diego State's basketball program currently has. A streak, and we even use the term activated. The streak is activated if you guys have a lead with 5 minutes remaining in a basketball game. As it's happening on the bench, is this something that the bench is aware of, that the bench acknowledges, or is this something that you only realize after the games, the streak that you guys have been on, and what happens at the 5-minute mark?
You know what, Darren? Honest to goodness, I never looked, but against New Mexico, maybe the last game or two, I've actually glanced up. So I don't know if I'm finally paying attention to it, but generally I never notice that. I'm so involved in the game. But for whatever reason, I looked up against New Mexico and saw we had the lead. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I might have jinxed it because they came back and had a 5-point lead with under 20 seconds to go. So I don't think I'll look up anymore. I'll just stay focused on the game.
Fair enough. 5 minutes to go, 20 seconds. It would be understandable for anybody to see that scenario, see how much time is left on the clock, and think, well, this is it. I mean, the Aztecs are going to lose this. Not only that streak that we just referenced, but a 10-game winning streak. It's on the line. It's likely to end here. Could you describe what it's like inside of the timeout there where you're talking to your guys? That's steep uphill when you think about the scenario there and the time remaining in the game. Could you just describe what it's like there with 20 seconds to go? And do you feel like your team honestly believed it was going to win the game?
Darren, it was tough because we were down 2 and we had played a great defensive possession, and they missed a shot, and it bounced right out of Zylan's hands. It fell right in his hands and bounced to them. And then they hit a deep, deep 3 to go up 5 with 20 seconds to go. And in that case, generally you just get it to the guard's hands, push it down the floor, and try to get it quick, too, because they don't want to foul and give you a 3-point play. Jeremy drove down, missed. I think Winston tipped it in, and we took a timeout. And then it was basically set the press and decide who we were going to foul if they got it in. And to our good fortune, they jumped from, which a lot of teams have in. We actually have it in, where you jump out of bounds, you go out of bounds to out of bounds, and then step the guy in to throw it in. And as they were stepping out of bounds, the ref felt they had both feet in the air when he caught it, and turnover, and we had a chance to then obviously get a 3 up to tie the game.
So you're not even really talking to your players about trying to steal the basketball there. You're saying foul as quickly as possible, down 3 in that scenario.
Well, obviously we're going to try to steal the ball. We put 2 guys on Elijah Brown, who had a great game. We figured he was their best free throw shooter. We didn't want it to go to him. And then we played Xavier Adams with 1 guy, and if they threw to Adams, we would foul him. And they stepped Adams out of bounds and tried to get it into Neal, who was another really good free throw shooter, and they had the turnover. And so at that point, timeout called. Now we're setting up the play to try to get a shot up to tie the game.
It's easy to be a critic here, Dutch, and certainly that's what a lot of us get paid to do. But that inbounds play, you just mentioned that you have a play like that you practice a play like that. And I wonder, I don't know what you can or can't say here, but under what circumstances would you actually call for that type of inbound pass, that type of play, rather than the more traditional type?
Well, if you have a guy guarding the inbounder, it's probably not the play to run because you're going to step a guy out, but there's still a guy on the guy throwing the ball in, which was Neal. We took a guy off Neal and put two guys on Brown. And so if they could execute the play, if they could throw out of bounds and step Neal in, that would be no one would be left to account for Neal. We'd have two guys on Brown and nobody on Neal. So I thought the call was the right call by them to say, hey, nobody's on the ball. Let's step out of bounds, step the inbounder in. He'll be wide open, and he's one of our best free throw shooters. And so I think their call was spot on, but the execution wasn't there. So, and I think obviously there's been debate whether there was a foot down or not. I think it's a bang-bang call. If you look in slow motion, it's always easier to say, hey, they messed the call up, they didn't mess it up. But at game speed, jumping out of bounds, the ref made the call that he saw, and so we were fortunate, and he did it, and then we got a chance to set up a play, obviously, where Malik Pope hit the three to push it into overtime.
So if you're calling that play, is it more likely that you're calling it in the timeout that this is definitely what we're going to do, or are you telling the players this is what we're going to do if they're not guarding the inbound pass? In other words, are you leaving it up to the players to decide once the ball is put in play?
I don't know that. I mean, sometimes you'll know from film if they're going to have a guy on the ball or not, but I saw them definitely communicate when they saw a guy wasn't on the ball. Everybody was on the same page with the Lobos. They looked at each other. They saw no one was on the ball, and whether they called it beforehand or called it at the time when they read the defense, they definitely were all on the same page. So I think Coach Neal had made the right call, like we all do in games. We try to make the right call, but sometimes the execution's not there. So we were very fortunate to have a chance to get the ball back because they're a very good team. They execute really well over the course of the game, and that's why you play to the end. It happens all the time, and we are fortunate it happened on the positive side for us.
Brian Dutcher, the AHC-HCIW. Dutch, does it have any effect on you whatsoever on the Aztec basketball program that the league came out afterwards and issued some sort of statement saying that there was a mistake made in that?
No. I mean, obviously, we're not going to come back the next day and replay the game, And listen, anybody that watches any sport played knows that these officials have a hard job, and it's always easy for us as fans to sit and look at things on replay and say, wow, when we look at it super slow-mo that they had made a mistake. But at game speed, it's hard to tell. And so Randy McCall is an excellent official, and I think everybody that has ever had him knows that. So whether he feels it was the correct call or not after watching it, I don't know.
Brian Dutcher on San Diego Sports Leader, the Mighty 1090. So you guys are up now. I mean, you have a sizable lead in conference play. You're going on the road at Fresno State. A tough place to play. I think they're 12-2 at home. So, Dutch, I just wonder where you guys are at this point in the season now. Are you does everything continue along as it has been for the last 11 games, or do you start thinking ahead now that you've opened up a little bit of a lead in the Mountain West Conference?
No, we just know that every game presents its own challenges. We had to go overtime to beat Fresno in our building, and so we know that they're more than capable of playing with us. And then, like you said, they're 12-2 at home, which is the best home record in the Mountain West right now. And so we know we're going into a tough environment against a team that knows they can play with us. So I know it's cliche, but it is. It's next game. It's the next set of challenges when you play a particular team. And this is a team that beat us at their place last year that ended our win against California schools. So we know it's going to be tough, and we're trying to do everything we can to prepare our kids to put them in a position to compete and win that game.
So a 3.5 game lead in the Mountain West Conference doesn't do anything for you guys thinking, all right, well, it appears like we're going to, barring a crazy collapse, we're going to be the number 1 seed in the Mountain West Conference tournament. All of your focus tomorrow night and then again on Saturday night. Nothing about the postseason here. Nothing about the conference tournament.
Oh, no, not even close.
Okay.
It's day to day. Like I said, I've had my dad in town, and he watched practice, and like he said, he says, you guys call them out on every mistake right on the spot, and we're coaching hard. I mean, we're not saying, hey, we've arrived. We are correcting every mistake that's made. We're praising good play, and we're trying to get better as a team. You know, you're getting better or you're getting worse. And so we still feel we have room to grow as a team at both ends of the floor, and we're working hard to do that.
Brian Dutcher. Dutch, yesterday we played this clip, and it was from postgame on Saturday afternoon. Steve Fisher stopped by and talked with Ted Leitner and gave you the credit for even putting Malik Pope on the court and said, you know, this was kind of Dutcher's idea. He said, let's put Pope out there. And then Dutch also spoke to Pope and said, if your defender backs away from you or puts his hands down, as the phrase goes, I think Mark Jackson was the first one to say it, hands down, man down. He gave you a lot of credit for that. I'd love to hear your own version of that story and how you ended up recommending that Malik Pope, because Fisher said it, so it must be true. But Fisher said, you're the one that said, hey, Coach, we might want to think about Pope. And then you also said the Pope, don't be afraid to take the shot.
Yeah. Well, Darren, it's not rocket science. Malik is a good shooter. And so obviously I felt quickly in a 30-second timeout, let's get our best shooters back on the floor. And then we ran a play where Malik, you know, we entered a Skyler, we popped Malik up to the top of the key and hit him. And really he's more of the trigger. He's the guy that's looking for Trey on the screen. You know, we're trying to screen Trey out then to get a three. But I told Malik as we headed out of the timeout, I said, Malik, if he's not there, just let it go. Because everybody knows Trey's going to get the shot. So they're going to run out there. And I was just thinking at 6'10" and his length, even if they have a guy on Malik, it's hard to contest his shot because he's so long and he gets it up. And so I told him, if he's not there, let it go. That's exactly what I said. And to Malik's credit, he stepped up. He saw the guy had low hands. He raised up and knocked it down. So well done, Malik Pope. And Steve Fisher obviously is the greatest guy in the world because if he'd have missed the shot, Coach would not have mentioned my name. He wouldn't have said, boy, this is all Dutcher's fault that he told Malik to shoot it. He'd have said, hey, I should have run a better play. So Coach is the best because he's always looking to give credit to everybody else. And that's why it's so great to work for a guy like that.
And then what would he have said to you afterwards? Hey, thanks a lot, Dutch. Good call.
He'd have said, what were you doing? No, he would have
How
never
did you talk me into that?
He'd have never said that. You know, Coach is the best. So, you know, we make calls during the game, and we all look good when the players execute them. So hats off to Malik Pope. He made us all look good.
By the way, forgot to tell you earlier, we had Jalen Rose on the show from Radio Row last week. Nothing but good things to say about you. Said you are the groundhog. Said you're the one that you groundhog your way in there. You get in the door, and then Coach Fisher comes in, and he is the closer.
Well, I'd never heard of groundhog as a complimentary term, so this is the first I've ever been called a groundhog, and it's a compliment. So I'm very much appreciative for Jalen for terming that.
I have one final question here. Were you watching any basketball on television last night?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what were you watching? Were you watching Duke play Louisville, or were you watching women's basketball, number 1 versus number 2, UConn against South Carolina?
I was watching the end of Duke-Louisville, and then I watched the end of Oklahoma-Texas, where Buddy Hield went one-on-one and raised up over really good defense and knocked the three down. And like I said, these players can make us coaches look awful good when they make plays like that.
No love for the ladies last night, 1 versus 2.
You know what, Darren? I wasn't even paying attention.
Ah!
I feel bad. Who won the game?
Who do you think won the game?
Connecticut.
They won every game. They've won 60 straight. I know it's a totally different sport. I hate when people compare men and women's basketball. But that's 60 straight for them. That's a joke.
Well, if they'd have lost, then I'd have felt bad I didn't win the game. But it's just status quo, so I didn't miss a thing. They win every game they play.
They win every game, everywhere, all the time. Doesn't matter who they play. All right, I was just curious if you got wrapped up in a number 1 versus number 2, because the other one was like 13 against unranked. So
no, I was, and then I watched a little bit of Notre Dame Clemson. So I watched all the men's games.
Yeah, I watched Buddy Hield. He's okay, isn't he? He's a pretty decent player.
What a great shooter.
Hey, Dutch, on the road at Fresno, never an easy place to play. They give you guys all sorts of problems, as everybody remembers, even from last year. 12-2 at home. It'll be an interesting one tomorrow night, 8 o'clock on the Mighty 1090. Back home to play Air Force on Saturday. Dutch, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Darren.